And the piece of artillery that we'll be demonstrating for you all today is our light bronze 6-pound field piece. This is just one of 11 pieces of artillery that you could have found at Michlimackinac during the 1770s. All 11 pieces are here to defend Michlimackinac against enemy attack. And this one is a very powerful and deadly weapon on an 18th century battlefield. There's a couple of things that make it such a good weapon. Number one is that it's highly mobile. It's made out of bronze, which is a lot lighter weight than a heavier iron cannon would be, allowing you to put it on a field piece. That's the nice big wheels that it's sitting on. Those let you move it anywhere you need to on a battlefield. There's actually a quote from the year 1777 that says, "Anywhere a goat can go, a man can go. Anywhere a man can go, he can drag a gun." They're not talking about muskets. They're talking about this. You can get this thing up a sheer cliff if you have to. So it's highly mobile. It also has a good range to it. It can take a 6-pound cannonball and launch it up to 1 mile. If you look back behind me on the bridge, where the cables come down, there's that big cement wall. That is about 1 mile from us. Or if you've been downtown, the Starline ferry dock is also 1 mile from this location. So you can imagine a nice big circle around the port at that mile distance. That's the area of control. If an enemy army wanted to attack Michlimackinac, once it got within 1 mile range, the artillery could begin to open fire. Not that distance, it's basically just warning shots. You're probably not going to hit anything at 1 mile. Wait until half 1 mile, and now you can hit something the size of that blockhouse up there. If the enemy still doesn't get the hint, and they keep coming closer, at 400 yards, you can load down case shot. It's a big tin can, packed full of musket balls, turns this cannon into one big shotgun. Good at clearing out anything and anyone in front of the gun for 300 to 400 yards. But from where we are to Old Mackinac Point Lighthouse down the lakeshore. So again, a very powerful, very deadly weapon. Historically though, here at Michlimackinac, the artillery was never used as a weapon because there was no one to shoot at. Even during the height of the American Revolution, no one attacks this place. The cannons are never fired in anger at anyone, but they were still being fired. And they were firing them off for 2 main reasons. The first reason is for practice. Practice makes perfect, and now we know they didn't get attacked. They didn't know that back then. They'd be ready to use these guns in case they needed to. And this one, by itself, should properly be manned by over 12 members of the Royal Regiment of Artillery. Those were the British soldiers dressed as I am in the royal blue artillery coat rather than the red infantry coat. The artillerymen would be trained in geometry, trigonometry, physics, all that math and science that goes into hitting something with one of these smoothbore muskets at great distance. And if this one needs over 12 artillerymen, and there are 10 other pieces of artillery inside the fort, we should have had well over 100 artillerymen stationed here. Historically, they had the same number that you are currently looking at. 1. Sometimes they got lucky and had 2 artillery soldiers, but that's nowhere near what they need for just 1 cannon. So they'd be training members of the 8th Regiment of Foot, like Brendan, in how to load up and fire the weapon, and then just supervising the aiming process. So a lot of practice. The second reason they're firing them off, and what we're about to do for all of you, known as a salute. Run down the black powder, no cannonball, and fired off in celebration. Maybe welcoming Native American leaders here for negotiations. New supply canoes will be greeted by a blast of the guns. They even use these cannons to celebrate important holidays here at Michlimackinac. Holidays like the 4th of
July.
June, King George's birthday. This is a British fort, but there are no hard feelings. We'll still fire this for you rather than at you. The first thing we need to do is prepare for action. Get the cannon ready to go. Everything you need to fire is strapped to the gun, but you gotta take that stuff off before you can fire. The boxes they just took off are very important that you take off. Those are ammunition lockers. They're full of explosives. You don't want that next to the barrel as it's firing. One stray spark gets in there, and now you've got 2 exploding bombs. A very bad day for the cannon crew. We also have some tools they just took off and some coverings on the barrel to make sure nothing gets shoved down there while we're not watching. Now that the cannon's ready to go, we can get our crew into position, man up the piece, and like I said before, over 12 people are needed to properly properly man it, but they had provisions on how to do it best. You as 3 people, it will just take more work on their part. Take care. Head vent. Lawson will take his thumb and cover up the touch hole at the back of the gun. That's going to make it a lot safer for Lawson to be working at that dangerous muzzle end. Later on, with Lawson's thumb there, he'll create a vacuum inside the chamber, putting out any burning embers. Search piece. We'll run down that big corkscrew, known as the worm, see if we can pull out anything solid. The charge from last time, a bird's nest, a wad of gum, we want nothing down there. Advance sponge. We also don't want anything hot down there. In battle, with a full crew of well-trained artillery soldiers, you could fire this cannon incredibly rapidly. An aim shot every 15 to 20 seconds, an unaimed shot every 5 seconds. That's quick, but dangerous. If there's something still hot down there, you run down new powder, it's gonna go off, sending the ramrod along with Brendan's fingers flying into Lake Michigan. So make sure that doesn't happen. Our next tool is this big Q-tip looking tool known as the sponge, and we shall sponge piece, run that down there, cool off the inside with a little bit of moisture. It's also a tight fit. As he forces it down there, it forces the air out, and when he yanked it out, you may have heard that light thunk noise. That was the vacuum that created behind it collapsing, and inside of a vacuum, nothing should be burning. It is now safe to load up, and finally time for me to do a little bit of work. Handle cartridge. I'll come back to our ammunition locker and grab one of our charges. Let's see what we have in here. Ah, there we are. So a historic charge would be 1.5 pounds of black powder in a flannel bag tied directly to the cannonball. We've got about 12 ounces of black powder in historically inaccurate tin foil, but nice and safe tin foil. So I'll take this up to the front of the gun. Whoa! Place it into the muzzle. I can now have Brendan ram down cartridge. He'll take the other end of the sponge, which is the solid wooden block, and run that charge down, give it a few hits, and put it right under where Lawson's been covering up with his thumb. That way we'll be able to use the touch hole to create a fuse. Prime! We'll take a long brass needle, just like the one I have here, run that down the touch hole, and that will poke open a hole in our charge. Once the charge has been cleared, we'll take a fuse out of that tin box on Lawson's waist. Those are priming fuses. Tin tubes packed full of black powder. Like the top of it, it'll send a jet of flame down and get everything else to go kaboom. But at this point, the cannon is primed and loaded. The next step, if you were in battle, would be to take aim. There's a large wooden spike that you can drive into the back to lift it up and go left or right. And under where Lawson was is a large screw. As you twist that, it'll change the elevation or angle of the gun. We are now just about ready to fire off this salute charge. I do want to warn you all though, this is a cannon. It is quite loud. I'm going to use foam earpieces. I'd recommend plugging your ears as well. So once I get these in, we'll only have 2 more commands to fire. And those 2 commands are make ready, fire! Michlimackinac. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. If you listen carefully, you might be able to hear it bouncing off the bridge and echoing. Our next program, though, begins at 3:30. There'll be a walking tour about the fort's gardens, starting at the center of the fort, and then at 4:30 in building number 7, you can grab a cup of tea. Until then, have a great day. Thanks for stopping in.